For years, viewers have believed they understood the story of the Brown family. The headlines, the emotional confessions, the carefully edited television specials all seem to explain how a once unified plural family slowly fell apart. Yet what if the moment that truly shattered the foundation was never honestly shown? What if the most devastating truth was deliberately softened, reshaped, or buried altogether? At the center of this unanswered mystery lies the catfishing scandal, an event that continues to haunt the family and its audience long after the cameras captured the tears. Officially, it was framed as the mistake of a lonely wife who crossed an emotional boundary online. Unofficially, however, there are whispers of a far darker reality. One involving early warnings, ignored evidence, and a son who may have seen the truth long before anyone else was ready to face it. The Catfish scandal has always been presented as a shocking betrayal that blindsided the entire family. According to the public narrative, everything unraveled suddenly. A secret online relationship, a fabricated identity, and a painful humiliation exposed to the world. But this explanation leaves too many unanswered questions. Emotional affairs rarely appear overnight. Behavior shifts do not happen in isolation. And in a household filled with intelligent, observant adults and nearly grown children, it is difficult to believe no one noticed the warning signs. This is where a different theory begins to take shape. One that places Logan Brown, the family's eldest child, at the center of a story that was never aired. To understand how this could be possible, we must return to the Las Vegas cul-de-sac era. 4 near-identical homes stood side by side, symbolizing unity, shared purpose, and the promise of stability after years of upheaval. On the surface, the family appeared to be settling into routine life. The children attended school, the wives established separate households, and the patriarch moved between homes according to schedule. Yet beneath this carefully maintained image, emotional fractures were already widening. Each household functioned more like an independent kingdom than part of a cohesive whole, and isolation quietly took root, especially in Mary's home. Mary's situation during this period was uniquely fragile. Her relationship with Cody had long since lost its warmth. Her only child was preparing to leave home, stripping away her remaining sense of daily purpose. The dream of expanding her family had ended, leaving her in a house that felt far too large and painfully quiet. In psychological terms, she was experiencing a perfect storm of loneliness, rejection, and identity loss. It was within this emotional vacuum that the internet became more than entertainment, it became escape. Viewers later noticed how frequently Mary appeared glued to her phone. During family gatherings, discussions, and even casual moments, her attention seemed elsewhere. At the time, this behavior was portrayed as harmless, a woman networking, building friendships, or exploring business opportunities online. In hindsight, it appears disturbingly different. She was not merely distracted, she was emotionally invested elsewhere. Her smiles were private, her laughter disconnected from the room she occupied. She was present physically but absent emotionally. Among all the family members, one person was uniquely positioned to notice and understand what was happening. Logan Brown was no longer a child living under his parents' authority. He was a university student, educated, logical, and technologically literate. Unlike the adults, who approached the internet with caution and naivety, Logan understood its mechanics. He knew how online identities could be constructed, manipulated, and falsified. He had grown up in the digital age, and that knowledge gave him a clarity others lacked. According to long-circulating whispers from those close to the production environment, Logan's concerns began quietly. When he visited home from university, he noticed changes in his mother's behavior that could not be ignored. Conversations were brief and distracted. Her attention remained fixed on her phone. The atmosphere in her house felt tense, heavy with unspoken secrets. This was not simple socializing. It was obsession. As a son who had long acted as a stabilizing force within the family, Logan's instinct was not judgment, but concern. The turning point allegedly came through a mundane request. Mary's laptop was running slowly, and she asked Logan to take a look. What seemed like a harmless favor may have changed everything. As Logan examined the device, he noticed something unusual. Browser histories meticulously wiped clean, tabs closed abruptly when he entered the room, and signs of deliberate concealment. Eventually, fragments of the hidden world surfaced. A chat window, cached images, a name repeated with alarming frequency, Sam Cooper. Logan did not need to hack or spy aggressively. Digital communication leaves trails by default. Metadata embedded in emails and images can reveal locations, devices, and inconsistencies. One overlooked email header or photo file may have been enough. When Logan traced an IP address associated with Sam's messages, the results contradicted everything Mary believed. This supposed international businessman was not operating from glamorous cities or corporate hubs. The digital footprint pointed instead to a residential location in Oklahoma. This discovery alone raised serious alarm bells. But Logan did not stop there. As he examined the messages themselves, the reality became even more disturbing. What he found was not romance, it was manipulation. Mary was being systematically isolated, encouraged to distrust her family, told she was unloved, misunderstood, and wasted within her marriage. Praise was followed by emotional withdrawal. Promises of a future were paired with threats of abandonment. It followed the textbook pattern of psychological grooming. Even more unsettling was the revelation behind the images. The man Mary believed she was speaking to did not exist. The photographs belonged to a real male model and actor, easily traceable through reverse image searches. The writing style, emotional tactics, and digital connections pointed elsewhere, to a woman. Evidence allegedly led Logan to a name, Jackie Overton. In one devastating realization, the illusion collapsed. Mary was not involved in a romantic affair with a man. She was being exploited by a female scammer posing as someone else entirely. Faced with this truth, Logan reportedly did the only thing he could. He confronted his mother privately. There was no shouting, no spectacle, only heartbreak. He presented evidence calmly, piece by piece, trying to protect her rather than shame her. But Mary was not ready. Accepting the truth would have meant acknowledging that her emotional refuge was a lie. The psychological cost was too high. She chose denial. She accused Logan of invading her privacy, of controlling her, of standing in the way of her happiness. The conversation ended with rejection. Time and again, viewers have witnessed the same pattern whenever Cody is confronted with a situation he would rather not face. His response is almost instinctive: deflection, bluster, dismissal. According to individuals familiar with the family dynamics during that period, Cody was so emotionally absorbed in his life with Robyn, and so disengaged from his marriage with Mary, that his initial reaction to Logan's warning was not fear or concern. It was irritation. Through his self-centered lens, he would have interpreted the situation as yet another episode of Mary being dramatic, another attempt to draw attention. In his mind, Logan was still just a university student. Well-meaning perhaps, but naive. What could he possibly know about adult relationships? It is believed that Cody brushed off the warning with casual indifference. Mary was a grown woman, he likely said. She was simply talking to people online, making friends, filling time. He would have minimized the issue, perhaps even making light of it with an offhand remark about a harmless digital pen pal. To Cody, it was not a crisis, it was an inconvenience. Something that did not warrant his time or emotional energy. Logan, however, was not reassured. His concern deepened into urgency. He pressed his father, insisting that this was not harmless, that the person communicating with Mary was manipulating her and that the situation carried real danger. But Cody did not want to hear it. Distracted by his responsibilities elsewhere, consumed by his youngest children and preoccupied with production commitments, he shut the conversation down. He told Logan to stop overreacting, to leave adult matters to adults. This moment would later crystallize as one of the most profound betrayals in Logan's life. Not only had his mother rejected the truth he tried to show her, but his father, the supposed leader and protector of the family, had failed him entirely. Cody did not simply misunderstand the warning, he ignored it. He chose convenience over responsibility, avoidance over leadership. For Logan, this dismissal marked the end of any illusion that the adults in his life were capable of foresight or accountability. He had done everything right. He had noticed the warning signs, investigated responsibly, confronted the issue with compassion, and escalated his concerns appropriately. And yet, At every stage, the system failed him. The family structure he had been raised to trust proved incapable of protecting itself. All Logan could do now was retreat, carrying the unbearable knowledge that the disaster he foresaw was no longer a question of possibility, but inevitability. When the catfishing scandal eventually became public, it detonated like a bomb. Media outlets seized the story, and it quickly became the dominant narrative of the show for an entire season. Viewers were shown emotional confessions, therapy sessions, and carefully staged confrontations. Pain, betrayal, and heartbreak were packaged into digestible episodes for primetime television. This marked the beginning of what can be called the second act, the fallout. As the revelation rippled through the family, cameras captured shock, tears, and disbelief. But a closer re-examination of these episodes reveals something deeply unsettling. While many family members reacted with visible confusion and distress, Logan's behavior stood apart. He was quiet, withdrawn, positioned at the edges of group scenes rather than at their center. His face carried no shock, only exhaustion and sadness. This was not new information to him. It was confirmation. During family meetings where Mary attempted to explain what had happened, the reactions of the younger children were raw and immediate. Tears, disbelief, emotional outbursts, these were genuine responses to a devastating revelation. Logan's reaction, however, was entirely different. He often stood with his arms crossed, jaw clenched, eyes distant. There was no visible anger, no dramatic reaction. Instead, there was a profound, bone-deep disappointment. The look of someone watching a catastrophe unfold exactly as they had predicted months earlier. This moment marked a permanent fracture in Logan's relationship with his family. It was here that he lost what little respect remained for the adults around him. He watched his mother, now publicly exposed, collapse into a role of victimhood, a role he knew could have been avoided. He watched his father perform outrage and betrayal for the cameras, conveniently ignoring the fact that he had been warned and had chosen inaction. He observed the other wives offering sympathy, some perhaps tinged with quiet satisfaction. In that moment, Logan ceased to be a child. He recognized, with devastating clarity, that he was the only true adult in the room. Those present during filming noted that Logan's demeanor was noticeably distant. He appeared when required, said what was necessary, and then disappeared. He did not engage in endless circular discussions. He did not contribute to therapy sessions or emotional debates. He was present in body only. His silence was not confusion, it was judgment. This was the great schism. For Logan, the scandal was no longer just about Mary's mistake. It was about the complete collapse of leadership, accountability, and emotional maturity within the family. His father had proven himself negligent, unwilling to protect his own household. His mother had proven herself vulnerable and reckless, willing to risk everything for a digital fantasy. The belief that his parents were wise, capable leaders was destroyed. Logan saw the narrative being carefully shaped by the network. Mary as the tragic victim, Cody as the wounded husband, the family as resilient survivors. It was a neat, profitable story. But Logan knew the truth was messier. He knew about the warnings that were ignored, the chances to intervene that were wasted. This was not merely a story of deception by an outsider, it was a story of internal decay. As a result, Logan began to withdraw emotionally and physically. He focused on his education, his personal life, and his relationship with Michelle. He began building a world rooted in stability, logic, and mutual respect. Everything he now understood was missing from his upbringing. The scandal did not just break Mary's heart. It shattered Logan's faith in the entire system. Once that respect was gone, it could never fully return. Yet Logan's disillusionment may not have ended there. Among long-standing fan theories, one in particular has lingered in hushed conversations for years: the Robyn connection. The timing of the scandal raised uncomfortable questions. The catfishing occurred shortly after Mary legally divorced Cody so he could marry Robyn and adopt her children. This act, framed as selfless and necessary, stripped Mary of her legal status and sense of security. Almost immediately afterwards, she became emotionally entangled with a stranger who seemed to know her vulnerabilities with uncanny precision. Robyn, portrayed as Mary's closest confidant, was deeply aware of her loneliness, insecurities, and longing for affection. She knew Mary's emotional landscape intimately. Logan, analytical by nature, may have begun to question how the predator knew exactly which wounds to exploit. The manipulation felt targeted, informed, almost surgical. This was not generic flattery. If Robyn truly had no prior knowledge, if she genuinely believed herself innocent, she would have repeated the same line that so many people use when confronted with uncomfortable truths. "If I had known, I would have done something. I love your mum." The words sound sincere enough, but Logan, now deeply cynical and acutely aware of the manipulative personalities surrounding him, would not have been comforted by tears alone. He had learned, painfully and quickly, that emotion was often used as camouflage. He would have recognized performance when he saw it. Rather than accusing Robyn outright, Logan would have done what came naturally to him, apply logic. Calmly, quietly, he may have pushed just a little further. He would not have raised his voice or pointed fingers. Instead, he would have made an observation that was impossible to ignore. "Isn't it strange," he might have said, "how this person knew exactly what Mum needed to hear? They knew about her problems with Dad, about how lonely she felt, about her fears and insecurities. It's almost as if they were reading her diary." That single statement would have created a fracture in Robyn's carefully maintained composure. Because, at that time, there was only one person who truly functioned as the human equivalent of Mary's diary: Robyn herself. She was the confidant, the listener, the shoulder to cry on. She knew Mary's vulnerabilities intimately. According to someone who worked closely with the production during that era, there was an unspoken tension between Logan and Robyn that was unmistakable. Logan no longer viewed her as a stepmother figure. He viewed her as a strategist. He saw the board clearly, and he saw who held the most power. To be clear, there has never been concrete proof that Robyn was directly involved with Jackie Overton. That idea remains firmly in the realm of fan theory. However, the narrative that emerges suggests Logan absolutely suspected something. At the very least, he may have believed Robyn was guilty of a profound and self-serving negligence. At worst, he may have wondered whether she was a silent beneficiary, or even an indirect contributor to Mary's emotional unraveling. That suspicion alone was enough to permanently sever any trust he had left. That moment, and Robyn's tearful yet deflective response, would have been the final collapse of Logan's faith in the adult hierarchy of his family. In his eyes, the system was no longer flawed, it was corrupt. His mother had acted recklessly. His father had abdicated responsibility. His newest stepmother appeared disturbingly adept at emotional manipulation. There was no safe authority left to rely on. Logan became an island, surrounded by a rising tide of dysfunction he could no longer fight. This brings us to the climax of the hidden narrative, Act 3, the silencing. The catfishing scandal was not merely a family crisis, it was a commercial opportunity. The network invested heavily in it, culminating in a multi-part, highly promoted tell-all special hosted by Tamron Hall. It was positioned as a defining moment in the show's history. Viewers watched Mary break down, Cody rage in confusion, and the other wives offer carefully measured responses. Producers themselves stepped into the narrative, blurring the line between documentation and orchestration. Yet one absence was impossible to ignore. Where was Logan? The eldest son, the most level-headed of the older children, was nowhere to be seen. This was not consistent with the show's usual approach. The older children had frequently been included in major discussions, often providing clarity and grounding when the adults spiraled. Logan's absence was a gaping hole, one that was never explained on screen. The simplest explanation is that Logan chose not to participate, that he opted out to avoid the drama. But a closer examination suggests something far more deliberate. The theory at the heart of this investigation is not that Logan chose silence, but that silence was imposed upon him. The belief is that the network, intent on protecting a lucrative franchise, made a calculated decision to keep Logan off camera during the most critical moment of the scandal. The reason is straightforward and devastating. Logan was dangerous to the narrative. He was the one person who could dismantle the entire storyline with a single honest answer. The version of events being sold to viewers was precise and intentional. Mary was framed as a tragic victim, lonely, emotionally starved, and cruelly targeted by a manipulative predator. This framing invited sympathy, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption. It kept audiences emotionally invested and protected the long-term viability of the show.